quite honestly, the best way to get a buyer to commit to exclusivity with you is going over your state's purchase agreement and contract.
All right, folks, welcome to another session. This week, we're continuing a theme around the NAR settlement because you folks want it. You guys have asked for this kind of content. How do you become aware? How do you prepare? How do you become educated around the settlement itself and the changes that are coming to the industry? So we have another great session along those lines. We have Amanda Camacho out of Sacramento. I found her online discussing, topics around buyer agency and how to present it to clients because, the words we use matter. The way we talk about these things really, really matters. And I thought Amanda's approach was very thoughtful and just a very effective way to get the point across and communicate these changes to our clients. So she seems really, really knowledgeable in the area. And it turns out she runs like several masterminds and helps educate and coach agents in a lot of things. And this is one of those things that she does. So Amanda, welcome to the interview today. Why don't you introduce yourself to our audience? Who are you? How'd you get into real estate? And tell us about the role you have right now.
Yeah, thank you so much for the introduction. My name's Amanda Camacho. I am with Real Broker here in Sacramento, and my partner and I, we are associated with the Lockbox Advantage, which is sort of a collective group of agents. We all contribute. We coach, we share knowledge, and hold masterminds, like you said, daily commitment calls. So very happy to be here. Been in the business personally for 8 years. Started off my business with a really good internship with a luxury agent. So I dove right into education and structure. And, that's really important in sort of how I build my business.
Awesome. Great. Well, if you talk to agents, that frequently, it looks like on a daily basis, and you're communicating with them, right, that this whole NAR settlement has been. Well, I will say this: I would say there's two camps with regards to reactions to the NAR settlement. One of them is kind of head in the sand. This is no big deal. That's one camp. They kind of don't care, or maybe even oblivious to it. They're like, whatever. And then the other camp is full on like DEFCON 4. This is the end of agency, right? Like, oh my God, things are gonna, the world is over, ending. So it's usually one of the two. I don't know why, but people tend to fall into one of those two camps, which I think is interesting. But how have people been reacting to this? What have you seen from agents? Because the people that have communicated with me have been around the second camp, right? They're a little bit freaked out. They're not sure what to do. There's a combination of the stages of acceptance, right? They've gone through anger at NAR, at the world, at attorneys. Now they're kind of getting, they're coming to terms with it. They're getting the acceptance phase. They're getting to the acceptance phase of the NAR settlement, and they want to be educated. That's what I've seen. There's a desire to get more information, to get training on it. A lot of brokerages, a lot of team leaders aren't really filling that gap effectively, I think. So what have you seen from agents? What are they asking? Where are they at with regards to the NAR settlement?
Yeah, I think you're right on it. I think that, there is a little bit of a gap of the education being offered. And quite honestly, it's because we never really did take the time to curate that buyer experience with a consultation first. And it's not a bad thing. I think that it's about time that we, as a whole, treat our buyers as we treat sellers. We would never negotiate, market, speak on behalf of a seller if we didn't have some kind of written agreement and clear understanding. So it's not bad. I think that there's some changes that need to happen, and that's probably where the transition and a little bit of the fears coming in is, okay, how do I do this with, especially like online leads, right? They're wanting to meet and just see houses. How do I convince them, wait, we need to sign this buyer broker agreement before I can open up the door? So scripts are going to be huge. Practicing, making sure that you are just having as many conversations around this as possible will definitely help. But the few key things that I'm hearing from agents are, how do I describe my compensation to my buyers? How do I describe it in the context of a buyer broker agreement when I've never used one before? How do I get them to sign exclusivity with me? And I think part of it is going about it like it's not new, like there is nothing strange here. This is what we do. I'm a professional. We have a fiduciary relationship together. And in order to work on behalf of you and your best interests, we need to have commitment together. And having those conversations like I said, it's not going to be a bad thing.
Yeah, 100%. And that's a great way. I really like that frame. I like that frame. I like to position it as, hey, I mean, you would expect me to work, me that I'm a professional, me being a professional, you would expect me to have this fiduciary duty for you and to do my best for you and to do all these amazing things for you, right? Well, great. This is why this agreement's going to make it clear as possible, right? This is what I'm committing to doing, and da 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 da. And this is what this is what I'm going to get paid. And I think that compensation piece is the one that sticks out for agents. I'm pretty sure because a lot of agents, like you said, may have never had their clients sign one of these agreements, or if they did, and you guys know you're out there, you would put it in the offer. They would sign it when they signed their first offer. So I know a lot of you guys say, "Oh, I've been using my agreements forever." I mean, be honest, right? If you put it in the first offer, that doesn't count. In my very humble opinion, it doesn't count. Or if you filled it out and you put whatever the seller's offering, that also doesn't count, right? Come on. You would always accept the compensation coming from the seller. You never had that value discussion, right? How do you position yourself for value? And Amanda, I think it's a great comparison to make because when you talk on the listing side, right? Talking about compensation and positioning the value, that's like a no-brainer. You'd never even sit in front of a listing presentation, even in your closest sphere, like your closest, you would never assume that that's just going to happen and that discussion doesn't have to take place. Not even in that situation would you assume it. You would not direct it, right? You wouldn't go right at that question because it's the heart of the whole conversation. I think on the buyer side, we've been spoiled a little bit, right? We kind of, got lazy. We kind of took it for granted. I mean, I mostly work with buyers. When I was an active agent, I closed about 100 deals. I'd say way more than half. 2/3 of those were at least buyers, right? So I know exactly what that's about. And when I was a buyer agent, this was like almost 10 years ago at this point. There were teams that used buyer agency agreements religiously, right? Mm-hmm. This is a decade ago. That you didn't have to; it wasn't required. At least in my state, Washington State, it wasn't required in any shape. But they did it, and they had a buyer a presentation. And the agreement wasn't just an agreement. It said they were going to get paid 3% no matter what. This is what they charged. So if that, in a situation with that, well, you'd have to come up with the portion of that, Mr. Buyer. Does that work? Right? They were like, and I was like, almost like, why would you go to that trouble? Right? Why would you do that? Well, 10 years later, they were right. I was wrong. Right? I'll be very honest about that. I didn't think that was necessary. Well, now the ambiguity is gone. Right? The ambiguity is gone. But how do you suggest agents approach the value conversation? Because compensation means nothing without value. They might even get said, no, if this is what I charge. No, well, that's a lot of money. Like I heard you could pay zero. What's going on? So how do you suggest agents, approach that?
Quite honestly, the best way to get a buyer to commit to exclusivity with you is going over your state's purchase agreement and contract. When I have my consultations, yes, I have, the sexy consultation put together with the cute timelines and the profile about me. One little thing that I did on my profile, which I actually have up at open houses now, is I went back in the history of all of my purchases with my clients, and I saw how much on average I was able to get my buyers and closing cost credits, and it's about $3,400 to $3,800 that I'm able to save them. So just like your listing stats, you want to have some stats. What is your purchase ratio? Are you able to get buyers in under that 100%? Are you able to get them some closing costs? Are you able to get your closings under 30 days? Things like that. Are you able to beat out multiple offers? Because you can pull up your
Are you even able to win the property? Like number one, in this market, it's like, hey, are you even able to get the offer accepted is a huge advantage, right?
Right. So talking to your client about how you get their offers accepted, talking to them about your state's purchase agreement. Ours is 16 pages here in California. It's very robust. And I'm actually really thankful for that now because we had a lot of our compensation was already broken down in our agreements. Our buyer representation agreement is so robust. I would encourage people to take a look at the California purchase agreement just to kind of see what it says in there. It's very clear. This is what I charge. This is what the expectations are. If you find a property, even if you don't use me, I still get paid. I get paid for up to 60 days after cancellation if you go into contract on a property that we discussed and toured together. It's very clear. It's also clear in that there's a separate agreement that asks the buyer that says, hey, do you want to ask for my compensation when we write your offer as a direct um, uh, payment from the seller instead of it coming out of your pocket? And of course, they're like, heck yes, I'll check that. But you make it clear that it's a request, and it always is. And I think what's different is it's not that, especially with the NAR settlement, it's not that brokers can't do compensation. Sellers can still pay compensation. The only thing is it's just not going to be listed online. And, you know, if you can't get a listing agent to be upfront about what their seller is willing to work with, you just send it with the offer. It's just going, you know, there's going to be here in California, we have a separate paragraph G where it includes the discussion of operating compensation. And it says, hey, I have an agreement with my buyer that I am due a compensation and they're requesting that I've written it into their offer. It's very clear. You know, I think there'll be some little, you know, things here and there on appraisal values and someone closing that didn't offer it versus someone closing that does offer it. And we'll have to work through that. Nobody has a crystal ball, but the contract is there. And as long as we're working through what's already presented to us with, you know, the contracts we have at the time, that's the best that we can do. And just read through the contract. And it's very clear. At least here in California, they've done a good job.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, in every state, they're starting to roll out these forms. If not, they will very soon. So 100%, I recommend doing it. So you're suggesting that one of the best ways to explain it and demonstrate, you know, why it's necessary is to just walk them through the buyer agency agreement.
Well, actually, even on top of that, walk them through the actual purchase agreement.
Purchase agreement. Okay. So both,
Yes.
actually, both.
Yes. So like here in California, when we do it, it actually has a disclosure regarding agency, possible representation of more than one buyer or seller, you know, fair housing. So the disclosure regarding agency, and it's all in the presentation, right? You have the booklet, nice. You have it all printed out. Here's the contract. Here's our agreement to work together. And I have them on the table together, and I open it to the agency disclosure on the purchase agreement. And I point to both of them. I say, so this right here lets the seller know that we have this agreement here. So I can work on your behalf. I can schedule the appointments and I can start negotiating that offer for you the moment I schedule the tour, not after you tell me you like it.
That's gotcha. I love it. Oh, and that's a great way to lay it out. I think it's very, you know, methodical. Kind of lets you go. It kind of show it as it's part of the process, right? This is what, you know, I'm required to tell you. This is why. Da da da. And a very kind of educational. It's like consultative sales. Like you're teaching them, you're educating them on the process, and this is just another step in the process. I really like that approach. Now let's. I'm going to put my agent hat on, right? The anxious agent. I'll be the anxious agent in this conversation, right?
Okay.
That, oh my goodness, you know, Amanda, what if they say no? What if they want to go directly to the listing agent and they think they don't even need me? Oh my goodness, how will they possibly agree to compensating me when they can just go to the listing agent? Throw my hands up. Oh my goodness, you know, the world is over. How would you respond to someone having that kind of a reaction?
You know, I would say that okay, so think of pandemic time when it was so incredibly hard to get your offer accepted. Still at that time, people were not running and calling listing agents saying, I don't want to work with my buyer agent. I'll just write the offer through you. It was rare even then. I think even at a time when it's unsure, people want their own representation and exclusivity. And if somebody doesn't care about having that one-on-one fiduciary relationship, you're going to lose some. Some people don't want to sign the agreement to work with you. Some people don't want to agree to your commission split. And it's okay to let some go so you can have some good opportunities. And honestly, that's going to be up to the agents. There will be agents out there that work for limited commissions. They'll work for limited time. Okay, fine. If I get you into a house this weekend, then maybe I'll charge you this commission. But if we go past the weekend and we go into a traditional buying tour that could take months, we're going to go back into my regular commission split. Does that sound fair? I mean, it's just like a listing. Do what you
Interesting.
want.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm looking at the silver lining here. I think one of the effects of these changes is that I think we are going to start to see more dynamism, more innovation in the compensation space, kind of the same way we've seen it on the listing side, where you have flat fee listing companies, right?
They're
A
still
lot of them
there.
went out of business last year because of the market, right? I mean, just that's what happens. Because when things kind of sell themselves, there's a lot of them. When things get a little harder to sell, you don't see as many. Funny, right? But they exist, right? There's flat fee listers, there's 1% listers. I mean, you've always had these different options, in the marketplace, and for whatever reason, the more traditional model has usually always won, right? Not. I tell my agent friends up in Seattle, because that's where I did most of my business. Like, I wish you would have colluded to get 3%, because no one's gotten 3% there in like a decade because of the competition, right? But there you go. But I think that's we're going to see that. We're going to see some of that innovation, some of that
Yeah.
entrepreneurship. We're going to see different business models. People are going to throw things on the wall, going to see if they work.
Mhm.
But I think we're not going to avoid that. We shouldn't avoid that conversation. We shouldn't avoid it. We should come prepared to it. So that's a great response to that concern. What about, here's another one. Amanda, right? But Amanda, these internet leads, they barely want to pick up the phone under the best of circumstances, right? How am I going to
Right.
get them to sign this thing? If I can barely talk, get a word in, because they're so hard to reach, they're kind of picky. They've got 18 agents calling them. I'm sure one of these unscrupulous agents will not ask them to sign, an agreement or whatever. How do you handle the internet lead, conundrum, right, so to speak?
Right. So early in my career, I did do a lot of internet leads. Right now, quite honestly, I don't personally work with a lot of internet leads, but when I was doing the internet leads, it's very much like somebody walking through the open house. They just want to see houses, and you're trying to get them to meet with you, and they're just kind of like, oh, why? I'm going to like 8 different open houses. No other agents pressuring me to sign in, no other agents pressuring me to meet with them. So it's very much sort of that, how do we bridge that hesitation of getting to know you better, right? And we have to remember that this isn't like, oh, let's meet so we can, so I can get paid and we can write offers, and I can't do this unless you do this. You just say, okay, well, so when an online lead calls, usually it's, hey, so and so, I saw you're interested in 123 Main Street, and looks like you're interested in buying a home soon. And they'll say, oh, yeah, I really love the house. I really want to see it. Okay, great. You have your financing in order? Well, blah, 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 blah. Okay, no problem. There's a lot that goes into play when writing an offer. And I assume that if you like this house, you're going to want to write an offer on it, correct? Well, and then you get a little bit more. And then, here's the thing is if they start to get iffy, you could say, well, it kind of sounds like maybe you're just curious to take a tour. If I line up maybe 3 or 4 other houses, do you have some time? Like, are you just wanting to see some houses, or is like this the house? Well, no, I'd be interested in viewing a few others. Like, okay, well, great. Well, what's going to happen is at one point you're going to fall in love. And I would hate for you to fall in love when you are going to have to make critically financial decisions in a really short period of time. So what we're going to do is we're going to meet at Starbucks like 10 minutes, 15 minutes before we tour the first one. We're going to go over the agreement to work together, what to expect when writing your offer. So if you decide to write an offer at the end of our tour, we're ready to go.
There we go.
There's just, it doesn't have to be weird. This is just what we do.
100%. This is the way the process works now, right? I think that's a great way to lay it out. And when you're talking about internet leads, right? The you can always find a reason to say, oh, but this, but that, these internet leads are very flaky. They're very hard. Well, yeah, they are. It's hard to get their attention sometimes. Yes, they are getting bombarded, by
Yeah.
other agents. Hence the need to stand out, right? And if you see the buyer agency agreement as some insurmountable hurdle, right, then you're not going to get very far with these leads, right? Like that. That's not the hard part. Like, there's a lot of stuff getting their attention about showing value as an agent, them seeing value in you. If you
Mhm.
can get open house lead, internet lead, cold calling lead, whatever you want it, to see value in what you provide and see value in working with you, the agreement's the easy part, right? I think the hard part is kind of getting their attention and saying, hey, I'm a professional here. I'm a pro, right? That's how we do things. This is how things are done. This, and I want you to win, and I can do this for you, but this is how it has to be done, right? And
Yeah.
again, I'm going to take away from that discussion we had. Listing agents are used to this, right? Listing
Right.
agents are, what are we listed for a weekend? And then, we can, again, there's innovation, and then there's like, I'm not going to do that, right? There's no
Right.
line there. And I'm sure listing agent, let me have, an open listing. I'm not really in for an exclusive listing. Well, we can do that, Mr. Seller, but I don't do that, right? Because of
Mhm.
these reasons. And and you can go on and might find someone willing to do that. I'm sure they might exist, maybe, but this is not the way I do things. If you want to do things with me, this is why I don't do things that way. Da 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 da. Like, this is how I would work with you, and this is why we should work this way. What do you think about that, right? So I think I have a feeling, man. Tell me if you think this is true. That I think these changes are going to accomplish what a lot of agents have wanted the last few years, couldn't really find a way to do it, which is further the professionalization of
Right.
the discipline of the industry, right? Because
Right.
it can be kind of funny that, yeah, and I'll say this with no buts about it. As buyer agents, we could get away without having some of these discussions on compensation. We could, because we're going to get paid anyway. As long as
I
we get them into a
mean,
house to sign, we're going to pay no matter what, right?
right.
Well, that's no longer the case. So now we actually have to have a discussion. The way every other professional known to man has to have that discussion with a service-based professional, has to have that discussion with their client. Dentist, lawyer, insurance person, inspector, you name it. Like this
Anyone,
is what we all have to do.
hairstylist, everyone,
Hairstylist.
everyone has a consultation with their client
Absolutely.
before they get to work. It is not unusual.
No,
Um,
it's the norm. It's the norm,
and
actually, for
totally fine. And
service-based
you know
business.
what? As somebody who is now, luckily, predominantly a listing agent, but I do still work with buyers. I work with all my clients. I appreciate when a buyer's agent has done the consultation with a buyer because it helps my seller have an easier escrow. Like, it's literally a win-win. And when I'm getting offers, I can tell when an agent has taken time to have a good consultation with their buyer. You can tell by the way the offer is presented, how much they know about their client. So, if it helps, even let your client know meeting with me and me getting to know a little bit more about you will definitely help assure that much more that we get your offer accepted if you want to write an offer at the end of our tour. Like,
Yeah,
just
that's a great one.
it's
I like
very,
that.
no listing agent wants to know, oh yeah, I just got, this call an hour ago and met this guy.
Mirando. Yeah,
That's
100%.
going to be hard to get your offer accepted. Like, oh, I don't know. I think he's approved. Like, it's not going to be helpful for you. This is a relationship based, and it's also a commitment. Listing agents want to see that we are taking time to bring people by their listings that are serious about buying it. It's not a bad thing for a little bit of the industry to be leveled up. And, as a quick reminder, if you have a meeting with a seller who needs to sell their property in order to make a purchase, then don't forget to have that purchase consultation with your seller. Don't forget to
100%.
have that buyer broker agreement signed with your seller, because what happens is sellers walk into really cool open houses hosted by really cool agents, And they're like, oh, I actually don't have any buyer broker agreement. And then we find out later that, they have a listing coming up in a few months and they actually have a listing agent. And then it gets a little bit awkward. So,
Yeah.
don't lose opportunity. They walk into open houses, new construction, go out of state and say, oh, yeah, I found my agent. Remind your people that are making moves. You can help them with the next step. Like, don't get cut out of the next deal.
Yeah, 100%. Actually, and you bring up a good point. It reminded me of another question I had. So, because I think that this, buyer compensation, buyer agency discussion kind of has two scenarios. One is the one we've been talking about, the buyer and their agent.
Mhm.
Do you think there's another scenario there of the listing agent with the seller? Because they kind of have to have the same discussion as well, right? What are we going to
Everyone's going to be
offer?
having the talk. Yeah.
100%. How do you recommend listing agents approach that discussion? Because they kind of have to make a recommendation to their sellers saying, hey, this is what we should do. Given that, there's no requirement for buyer agent compensation, what should we do, in this process? Have you guys had that kind of a discussion, what do you guys recommend in that scenario?
Yeah. So, and it never has been a requirement. Yes.
100%.
So it never has been a requirement. Luckily, like I said, here in California, we have our listing agreement really chunked out nicely. It says how much they're paying me, how much we're paying the other side. So we've always had this conversation. Couple of things I like to do. So I like to bring in a net sheet. Obviously, we all do, right? But it's the way you present the net sheet. So you present the net sheet while you're presenting the marketing before you talk about the listing price. And, don't talk about the listing price at all. We know what it probably is going to sell for. So aim a little bit low and bring them a net sheet and say, if everything goes well, and talk about the move. How much do you need? What do you think your new mortgage is going to be? How much cost do you want involved in paying for your down payment? Like, get their mind on the move. And then say, okay, so if we got you this, and present the net sheet, if we got you this amount, do you feel like this is a good amount to make that move? And they'll say, oh, yeah, that's great. And you say, great, because that includes everything. It includes all of the selling costs, it includes the commissions, and it includes offering a commission to bring in a buyer's agent and make sure that they have a good fiduciary relationship and wrap that deal up, because we need them to get the buyer moving along too. And usually it's fine. There have been some people, well, I heard I don't need to pay a buyer's agent. Yeah, you never have. You don't have to pay a buyer's agent. But let's also think about buyer costs. So now what we could start bringing, which I think is going to be a great idea, bring in the buyer's cost to close on their home if they
Oh, yeah.
offer the compensation versus if they don't offer it. So you could say, okay, well, here's the buyer's cost to buy your house out of pocket. Here's what it is if you don't offer compensation. Your call. Let's go ahead and pull up a neighborhood that's listed $100,000 more than yours that is willing to pay for compensation, because that's how much more in a loan this $25,000, $30,000 is going to be, depending on your average sale price, how much this $18,000 to $30,000 is going to be if you're having a buyer pay out of pocket. No problem. We just need to keep in mind that you're now no longer competing within your neighborhood. We're competing within this exclusive neighborhood that is a little bit more luxurious and is willing to offer compensation.
It'll cost them the same at the end of the day.
Buyers
buying, $1 million house with a $600,000 price tag, right? That's a
Exactly.
really great way to frame that discussion. I like that a lot.
You don't even need to talk about the price or the commission. Talk about the seller's net and the buyer's cost to close. And as long as those are win-wins, we're fine.
I love it. Oh, it's a great one. A great way. So, and Amanda, I can tell you're a pro. You've thought through a lot of these, objections, a lot of these mindsets, because, it's what I see every day. I see a lot of these kind of reactions, these questions, and like I said, I think it's ultimately going to be good for the industry at the end of the day. I think we'll look back on this a couple of years from now and go, wow, remember we were all went crazy with an NAR settlement, and now how, like how, more transparent we are with these decisions, how clear it is
Right.
for our clients. Maybe we found these new innovative ways to get compensated, as professionals. And, that's my optimistic view, right? And in a couple of years, kind of looking back at that, and hearing you describe some of these, challenging conversations, has made me feel, yeah, that's the right way to do it. I think that's a better way to do business, than other ways. Because I've not only been an agent, I've been a buyer, right, in different
Yeah.
areas of the U.S. And sometimes I would get the impression that sometimes these buyers agents would kind of want to sneak into the deal, right, and not have these consultations and avoid, right, almost not even wanting to answer the question, are you the listing agent, or are you a buyer agent? They wanted to avoid that question, that level of transparency, right, which is kind of crazy. So I think,
Right.
the professionalization of the industry, I think, is a great thing. I think it's a positive thing. I think it's going to be better overall for everyone. I think you guys are contributing a ton to that. So kudos to that. So Amanda, but not only that, but you guys have, you have a great offer, for members here of the group. You put together some goodies, you want to give to people. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that, and tell us more about the lockbox and what you guys do.
Yeah, so the Lockbox was founded by my partner, Jessica Hayes. She's an amazing agent. She was my mentor when I first started, and she's the one who drilled the buyer broker agreement into me when I was a little baby agent. So that's why we've kind of always used it. And agents thought we were crazy. But at the
Yes,
Lockbox,
I was
at the
one of those people. I was one of those people.
yes, yeah, they were like, okay, calm down. We don't have to do all that. Well, now it's just kind of like, okay, we're fine. Everybody's
Ah,
gonna get around. And so at the lockboxadvantage.com, we're offering the downloadable library. So they can go into the library. There is context around more than just buyer broker agreement, but it's in there too. We have a 15 days of gain when you first meet a buyer, how to send them a series of videos to keep in touch with them. We have a lot of scripts for expireds. I really like partnering expireds around my open houses, and we pair it with
mhm.
something we call the watch list, which is creating your own unique inventory of off-market properties to have a different database. So there's a lot of fun stuff in there. Like I said, we're just fellow agents, and Jessica's a coach. I'm now a coach there too. And we just want to share some of the things that worked with us, worked with other agents that we've spoken to and developed over time. And we do really like to share results, not just ideas. So the things that we have in there are actual strategies and tactics that we've personally used, not just
Love it.
thought sounded cool. So yeah, just check it out. And
I
there
love
are
it.
some purchasable options you can do. We can help you with the branding. We can help you with your buyer consultation if you'd like. But yeah, they can play around in there and see what they'd like.
Yeah, definitely. So, we'll drop a link, in the comments below. Amanda, that's awesome. Just one of the things you mentioned, off-market property list. My goodness, every agent should have an off-market property list. I mean, you just should. They're very
Yeah,
simple to create, and it's just an amazing goodie. It's a great lead magnet. It's a great way to attract, some of those buyers, right? Like, oh, what? Because you have access to an off-market property list. I think that's great. I love that, because as an agent, I had one of those, and I actually made it by accident, but it ended up being really
I
valuable,
know.
to people, right? Because I
Some of the
talked to
best
you.
ideas are
Yeah,
on
it's
accident, right?
100%, right? Just talking to with either for sale by owner or old expireds that I had talked to that were kind of nuts, but they would, hey, bring me a buyer and we'll talk, right? So hey, well, you're now officially on my market property list, because you tell, hey, if I have a buyer, I'll show it to you. So that's a great way. That one tip is probably worth the price of admission, because that's a great resource to have as an agent. So I love it, Amanda. We'll drop a link here in the comments below so people can check it out. Thank you so much. It's been a great session. I love talking to people that really know their stuff. And this has been a great conversation. Thanks, Amanda.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's been great.